traditions. Now, I want to emphasize, though, that religious literacy is important for more than just having a global perspective on the world. There is another civic reason for why religious literacy is important. Religious literacy is essential for the smooth functioning of a pluralistic society. And I want to develop that argument a little bit by referring to a book by political philosopher Amy Gutmann called Democratic Education. What she argues in that book is that we rely on education in a democracy to cultivate the skills and virtues of deliberation, discussion, and argumentation that allow citizens coming from different perspectives with different identities to develop laws and policies that bind us all. Deliberation, she says, is essential to democracy. Deliberation has to be widely cultivated for democracy to be sustained. So we have to develop the ability to argue well. Argue well and argue fairly. She says, deliberation calls upon the skills of literacy and critical thinking, the ability to understand and appreciate different people's perspectives. It calls for virtues such as truthfulness, nonviolence, sound judgment, civic ethics, generosity towards others. Deliberation is what happens when groups with different values and different agendas and different visions of what the good life is make their case in the public square, argue with each other, confront each other, compromise with each other to form the policies that bind us all. If we, as Americans, are going to wrestle with how to take into account all of these different versions and visions of the good life, we have to understand what the different versions and visions of the good life are. We have to have accurate information about what it is that different people call the good life. And for that matter, we need to have a deep-rooted understanding of whatever our own tradition happens to be and what we claim to be the good life. This holds true for all sorts of views and perspectives, but I think it is especially true in regard to religion. Especially good. Again, I don't think we can reach those who are committed to the path of hate, but we can redirect some who are lost in a sea of misinformation and are searching for a path, many of whom are generous and of goodwill and are looking for points with which to agree. The problem is that we don't do an especially good job in American society fostering religious literacy. Our education system, I think, is lacking in this regard. Private education has its own practices from school to school, but the bulk of students are in public education. Public education varies tremendously from state to state, district to district, school to school, but in general, fostering religious literacy is not one of the strengths of public education. Consider, for example, our own state of Texas, which only recently revised the course standards for social studies courses for all the grades. If you look at what the state says has to be taught in public school social studies courses, you see that religion is mentioned throughout the grades, here and there. So certainly the concept is addressed, but the only sustained treatment of religion comes in the high school world history class. In that high school world history class, Christianity gets a fair bit of attention, especially medieval Christianity, the Roman Catholic Church, the Crusades, the Protestant Reformation, the split between Eastern Orthodoxy and Roman Catholicism. That gets a fair bit of attention, but guidelines for other traditions are very, very fuzzy and undetailed. So, for example, one state standard for that course requires that the student, quote, summarize the fundamental ideas and institutions of Eastern civilizations that originated in China and India, with no guidance. I mean, it's this enormous, sweeping directive. Another standard that's focused more directly on religion directs the student to compare the historical origins, central ideas, and the spread of major religious traditions, and then it names them all. It's another sweeping mandate with no specific guidance. Islam is mentioned in requirements that focus on how Islam influences law and government in the Muslim world, and particular attention is paid to Muslim interaction with other religions. So with Jews and Christians in Asia, Europe, and Africa, Muslim interaction with Hindus in South Asia. One standard focuses on the Israel-Palestine situation, and you're not going to believe the way the State Board of Education has decided this topic is to be handled. Students are to explain how Arab rejection of the State of Israel has led to ongoing conflict. It's not exactly a balanced approach, but that's what the state requires. Within these standards, Christianity is the only religion that is treated as internally diverse. So students will learn that there are Protestants, Roman Catholics, and Eastern Orthodox, but students don't learn about differences between the various American branches of Judaism or the differences between Theravada and Mahayana Buddhism. The words Sunni and Shiite don't even appear in these guidelines, much less something like Sufi. So there is a lot of work to be done. Precisely because of this void, there is a lot of room for religious organizations and civic organizations to make a big impact. This is a place, I think, where religious and other civic organizations can help fill the void, because in many cases what those organizations provide will be the only education about religion that people get. I think it's important for religious and civic organizations to model the skills of deliberation, to model tolerance, and to offer an alternative to hate and paranoia and prejudice. Interfaith dialogue is a big part of this, but there's also a need for